Welcome back to the channel. I hope you enjoy. Wings. I had bought a huge patch of land with an old farm on it. The price was not a concern since all I had was money. Eventually, I took down the barns and shed, did the renovations myself, which took a year or so to do, added more rooms and a side to the house which gives it a bigger look. I was satisfied with the whole thing, and once I knew I was completely finished, I had a party of maybe 10 friends come over. We had a barbecue with plenty of drinks and loud music on the deck with cool lanterns. I was set for life and prepared to enjoy it. The land I purchased stretched past the tree line, which was maybe 100 meters both ways. It wasn't bad. Nighttime was relaxing, and sometimes if the night is right, the moon would shine up the landscape so it's not as dark as it would be. My friends and I sat on the grass with lawn chairs where I had made a huge fire pit. The flames could be almost 10 feet. The view would be incredible. As we sat around the fire talking amongst each other, laughing with beer bottles clanking, I noticed one of my female friends looking hard over her shoulder towards the trees, and she points, "What's that over there?" I shrugged it off and told her it's probably one of the horses that got free from the farm down the road. It was a common thing, and they would be around to collect it usually, so we didn't take a second look. As we were laughing over ourselves, we heard an ear-piercing sound fill the air which sounded much louder than anything anyone here has ever heard, followed by the sound of galloping footsteps. I got my friends on the deck as I went to inspect just what was happening, and the sound of horses could be heard running around my open area. One of my friends comes running through with a few flashlights I had stored in my shed, and 4 of us went to inspect what was happening. We found that the horses from the farm down the road were running in circles around my land, and it just didn't seem normal to me. One of my friends got knocked down as one was passing, and it was just chaos as we all ran around and seemed like they were just circling us, but that was far from what was really happening. After a few seconds of collecting what was going on and seeing these horses running in all directions, I see a pair of headlights coming down the road and running over onto the grass in our direction, and comes to a complete stop as we turn to see the horses running away from the car's lights. I see my neighbor step out from the car yelling at us, "Get in the house now!" I instruct my friends to run for the house as I ran up to my neighbor and asked him what's going on. He looks at me with a serious look in his eye. "You didn't see it yet, have you?" I looked at him confused. "See what?" He took out his phone and turned on his Ring camera app. Begins to play a video of his barn, and I'll be damned to say that what I saw was something out of a movie, a horror movie. The video showed restless horses in their stables and suddenly all of them breaking out. Not sure how, but one after another. All but one made it out, and what came on screen next was some kind of monster. It looked the size of a human being, but the eyes were glowing a white or yellowish shine. Another one came into view, flapping its wings and closing them as it kind of hopped into view. What I can see was that these things had started to eat and tear away at one of my neighbor's horses, and when they were done, they went on and chased the others, which ended up on my land. We sat in the car as we saw a few horses run past. I, of course, was still in disbelief from the footage. Obviously, with my neighbor holding a shotgun, he went after the things, and to gather up his horses. I got out of the car and sprinted back towards my house. As I was just nearing the deck, I heard a scratching sound above my head, and with a panic, I shined my flashlight upward, which was the stupidest move I could ever do, and there it was. The eyes were round and oval, just a bit wider than a human's, and there was what looked like no mouth. Head was like a heart shape, and the entire body was skinny, brown and grayish, with its wings folded behind its back, sitting perched and observing me like it was curious. I froze in fear, staring at this thing with my light shined into its reflecting eyes. I quickly gathered myself together and ran inside as quick as I could, with all my friends gathering around me, asking what happened out there. I couldn't see a thing for a few minutes because I knew they were sure as heck wouldn't believe a word I would say, since we were all kind of drunk from the beers. I told them that the horses just escaped and some wolves were chasing them, and of course they bought it, except for one of my friends. After that weekend, I hardly spoke to anyone for a few months, and I did more work on the house, which it didn't need. I just wanted to keep myself busy, I guess. I got a text along with a picture with the words, "I seen it too," under it, and looked to see the very same thing I've seen that night. My friends had taken a picture of the kitchen window and this thing looking inside of the house. Those eyes is what haunts me, because when this thing looks at you dead on, you know it's thinking and has something of an intelligence to it with a deep fear it gives off. Nothing has happened since then, and I sure hope it won't, because if anything at all, I'll consider selling my land for cheap just so I don't have to see those eyes ever again. Don't let her in. Living in a small town nearly in the middle of nowhere, nothing ever really happens. Quiet and boring, with the occasional fair stopping by for a week, and gone just like that. There were some other festivals that the town has, just to keep things interesting, but I guess it's alright here. One evening, my mother had planned to go out with a few friends as I stayed home playing video games and watched the dogs since they were always biting at the furniture, so basically I was a babysitter. I was in the living room playing online games with my headset on, yelling and cursing at friends, how any gamer would. As I was playing, I just so happened to lift my headset off to one side to listen to the dogs, making sure I didn't hear anything suspicious. And then I heard a faint knock, thinking maybe the dogs did push something over. I got up and looked around and found them sleeping in the back room where their beds were, and seen everything was normal for the most part. I started back to the living, and that's when I heard the knock at the back door. I thought to myself, who the hell can that be? I slowly approached the door and put my hand on the handle and nearly opened it till the knocking happened once more. The door handle started to jiggle and the knocking started to become more frequent, like someone was in a panic to get in. I yelled, "Who's there?" And the voice of my mother replied, "Honey, it's me. Let me in. You there? Let me in, sweetie." I was just about to unlock the door, thinking maybe she forgot her keys, but that's when I realized that she never calls me honey or sweetie. She was always a stern, stubborn person, and that was just her personality, but hearing her call me those names was unusual. I waited a few seconds while still hearing the knocking and the sweet names from whoever this was. It continued as the handle shook more vigorously as the knocks turned to banging, but the tone of voice remained the same. I began to get a cold chill down my spine while the door shook harder and harder, listening to this thing trying to get into the house from the back door. Mom never used the back door ever, since she always parked the car in the front driveway, which prompted me to look outside the front window, and to my surprise, her car had just started to pull in. I waited till she finally approached the door and pulled her in as quickly as I could, and she obviously got mad, but I quickly shushed her to listen. "The hell is that?" We slowly went to the back door and I whispered, "Listen." As she leaned in at the shaking door, and the shock on her face was a face she had never made before. The look of horror hearing her own voice talking through the door made all the blood from her face drain a pale white. We stood there as the banging sounded like it was throwing its entire body against the door with hard force. I grabbed a baseball bat from the closet as my mother was on the phone with local police, while we heard her voice still calling out to me. Trying to peek out the side window, but all we could see was a dark figure with somewhat gray hair. This went on for another 10 minutes when my mom had finally had enough, since the police put her on hold. She presses her shoulder against the door as I was holding the bar ready to swing if it did make its way inside somehow. My mother took a deep breath and replied in a loud, stern tone of voice, "Whoever or whatever the hell you are, you will leave or I will be forced to defend this house with excessive force." And just like that, the sudden banging and talking stopped. There was an eerie silence for a few seconds, and heard the sound of what sounded like nails scratching against the door moving downward, and the thing that pretended to be my mother changed its voice in a whisper. "Mine." and it went quiet once more. We both ran to the window and seen whatever it was, walking away back into the dark. There's nothing back there but heavy bushes and trees that stretch for 10 miles into nowhere. My mom talked to the police, but not long after, and even warned neighbors across the fields about what just happened and to be wary of whatever it was out there. It never came back after that one incident, and no other troubles happened, which was a good thing, because I can't imagine what it was at the back door calling out to me to open the door. Some of the townspeople have claimed that our area was a place where a witch used to live just past the tree line, but nothing was ever found. It just makes me wonder and fear if the stories were true, but finding out is something I'm not gonna venture into. If you liked that video, then like the video. If you're going to bed soon, sweet dreams. And if you have a full day ahead of you, I hope it goes well. Thank you for taking your time to spend on watching one of my videos on my channel, and I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.